the sun over Alexandria was no longer a bringer of life. It had been transformed into a cold, judgmental eye, glaring down at a world being unmade by a hunger from beyond the sky. From the top of the Pharos, the great lighthouse that stood as a sentinel for the Mediterranean, the view was a testament to the end of history. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, was being pulled upward in a shimmering silver-gray column, defied by gravity and snatched into the belly of the siphon ship, a jagged, obsidian leviathan that hung over the delta like a parasite on a dying god. Prefect Sertorius. The alignment is shifting. The weight of the starglass is cracking the upper masonry. The voice belonged to Elias, an astronomer whose eyes had been burned white by looking too long into the forbidden optics of the enemy. He was strapped to the rotating brass frame of the great mirror, his fingers dancing over a series of captured alien control rods that hummed with a low, vibrating violet light. Hold the alignment, Elias. If that beam misses the core, we won't have enough water left in Egypt to bury the dead. I roared, my voice barely carrying over the deafening mechanical shriek of the siphon ship's intake. I am Gaius Sertorius, commander of the Legio III Cyrenaica, and today I do not lead a charge across a field of grass. I lead a defense of a mountain made of marble. The Pharos, once the pride of the Ptolemies, had been hollowed out. Its great fire had been extinguished, replaced by a nova core, a pulsing white-hot heart of an alien scout ship we had dragged from the desert sands. Around the core, Elias had constructed a labyrinth of starglass mirrors, translucent shards of alien alloy that didn't reflect light so much as they amplified it into a weapon of total sublimation. But the stars were not blind to our defiance. From the dark underbelly of the Leviathan, a swarm of aeon flies emerged. They were thousands of small metallic drones, their wings made of flickering blue energy that hummed like a hive of angry hornets. They dived toward the Pharos, their goal to dismantle the mirrors before the sun reached its zenith. Archers, bolts to the sky. On the middle tier of the tower, 500 legionaries stood at the ready. They weren't using standard arrows. Their ballistas were loaded with blue-tipped lances, iron bolts dipped in the reactive coolant of the alien engines. Fire. The air was filled with the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of the heavy machinery. The blue-tipped lances streaked upward, trailing arcs of cerulean lightning. When a lance struck an aeon fly, the reaction was instantaneous. The drone didn't just break, it detonated in a spray of sapphire sparks, its internal gravity drive collapsing in on itself. The sky over Alexandria became a chaotic canvas of white sun, black ships, and blue explosions. Sertorius. Boarding parties. They're scaling the western face. I looked over the marble parapet. The sea below was churning, not with waves, but with the displacement of chrome legionaries. These were humans, captured sailors and farmers, whose bodies had been fused with alien nanite armor. Their skin was a dull, reflective silver, and their eyes were glowing red slits of machine logic. They were climbing the vertical walls of the Pharos with magnetic claws, moving with a stuttering, nonlinear speed that defied the human eye. To the ramps. Gladius out. I led the first cohort down the spiral stairs. The marble was slick with salt and the black oil of the aeon flies that had already crashed into the tower. We met the chrome legionaries on the narrow external walkway. It was a butcher's shop of the future and the past. My gladius, reinforced with a sliver of starglass along the edge, hummed as I swung it. I met a silver-clad intruder, my blade catching the alien's mechanical arm. The starglass edge didn't cut. It vibrated through the chrome, shearing the arm off in a spray of white sparks and gray, synthetic blood. The chrome legionary didn't scream. It lunged for my throat with its remaining hand, its magnetic claws glowing red. I stepped inside its guard, slamming the boss of my scutum, a heavy shield plated in lead and alien alloy, into its faceplate. The mask shattered, revealing the hollowed-out skull of a man I might have known in another life. I drove my blade into its central processor, located where the heart should be. The machine man jerked, its red eyes flickering out, and tumbled 400 feet into the sea. Keep the line. They cannot reach the summit. The combat on the ramps was a desperate, claustrophobic grind. For every silver monster we threw into the abyss, 3 more took its place. The Pharos was a vertical battlefield, stained with the red of Rome and the gray of the stars. Above us the tower groaned. The sun was almost at its peak. The heat on the top tier was becoming unbearable. The white marble was beginning to turn translucent, the sheer energy of the Nova Core vibrating the stone at a molecular level. Sertorius. Now. The light is true. Elias's scream was a ragged, ecstatic sound. I fought my way back up the stairs, my armor scorched and my shield a dented ruin. I reached the summit just as the sun aligned perfectly with the primary star-glass array. The nova core in the center of the chamber flared with a brilliance that turned the world white. Elias slammed a brass lever forward. The Pharos didn't just shine. It screamed. A beam of white-gold energy, 10 feet wide and hot as the surface of the sun, erupted from the lighthouse. It lanced across the 5-mile gap between the tower and the siphon ship. The air in the path of the beam was instantly vaporized, creating a vacuum tunnel that sucked the clouds inward. The beam struck the Leviathan's central intake, the mouth that was drinking the Nile. The obsidian hull of the ship didn't melt, it shattered. The concentrated solar energy traveled up the water column, turning the silver-gray river into a pillar of steam. The siphon ship shuddered, its bioluminescent ribs turning a frantic, dying violet. The internal gravity wells, overloaded by the Pharos beam, began to fail. It's breaking. Look at the sky. The mile-long ship began to tilt. Massive chunks of obsidian glass, the size of Roman temples, broke free and fell into the Mediterranean, sending tidal waves crashing against the harbor walls. The central core of the ship exploded, not with fire, but with a soundless expansion of white pressure that blew the clouds away for 50 miles. The column of water that had been suspended in the air fell. It was a deluge of biblical proportions. A wall of water slammed back into the Nile Delta, the roar of it drowning out the dying cries of the aeon flies. The siphon ship was gone, reduced to a rain of black sand and cooling glass. The Pharos beam flickered and died as the nova core burned itself out. The summit was silent, save for the heavy breathing of the survivors. The starglass mirrors had melted into jagged, cooling puddles of slag. Elias was slumped over his controls, his skin blistered, but a smile on his sightless face. I walked to the edge of the parapet. The Mediterranean was littered with the wreckage of the stars. The Chrome legionaries had gone inert, their red eyes dark, their silver bodies falling into the sea like heavy stones. Alexandria was still standing, its white marble buildings stained with soot and salt, but alive. I looked toward the Nile. The river was muddy brown again, flowing thick with the silt of the earth. The theft had been stopped. I took off my scorched helmet and let the wind, the honest, salt-smelling wind of the sea, cool my face. My hands were shaking, the weight of the gladius feeling like a mountain. We had turned a lighthouse into a godslayer, and the price had been the very stone beneath our feet. The top tier of the Pharos was crumbling, the marble calcified and gray from the heat. "We saved the water, Prefect," one of my centurions whispered, leaning on a broken ballista. "No," I said, looking up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear in the cooling dusk. "We just showed them that even the sun belongs to Rome." The sun set, a deep, natural orange. The shadows of the Pharos stretched long across the harbor, reaching for a horizon that was finally empty. The great work was done. The tower stood, a broken and sightless giant, but its light had been the final word of an empire that refused to be forgotten. The stone cooled. The water flowed. The eagle remained. The silence of Egypt returned, heavy and ancient. The birds began to fly again, cautious and low. The Pharos of Alexandria sat in the dark, its mirror shattered and its fire dead, but the memory of the white gold beam was etched into the eyes of every man who lived to see the Nile return to its bed. The stars were just points of light again. Distant, silent, afraid.